mentioned, we do have a recording available to it, so the folks who did not get an opportunity to attend that will have an opportunity to have a replay of that session. But for today, I thought it would be a good idea to do a quick recap to set the right stage for the session. After that, Ashish will take you through the how aspect and give you an overview of Saama's approach to the aggregate spend solution. So what is this aggregate spend about? Well, a key premise of all the aggregate spend laws, including the Federal Sunshine Act, is to provide greater transparency between the physicians and the industry in a way to curb possible unmerited industry influence on the prescribing habits of physicians, right? Now, we know that in most companies there are several departments that spend money on various things like the speaker programs, training events, research, advisory boards, etc., etc. And in some cases, the same subset of physicians are the beneficiaries of these different departmental activities, and this makes it extremely hard for any organization to keep track of how much was spent on, say, any particular doctor. So our beloved legislators, by passing this aggregate spend laws or set of laws, in a way are pushing the industry to put into place an appropriate an appropriate set of systems, if you will, required to accurately capture, track, and report this spend information across the entire enterprise. Moving into the why aggregate spend, well, I read this interesting observation on a blog recently which painted a little different picture than the usual what we hear of, that the aggregate spend is expected to provide more transparency, will help funnel more money into the research side of things, will potentially help lower cost of prescriptions, etc. It actually categorized the spend as a stimulus initiative. So that was pretty interesting given our current state of the economy. But the takeaway to this point is that an aggregate spend initiative will involve a good amount of focus, effort, and money to accomplish. Now, in addition to the regulatory compliance stuff that the aggregate spend initiative will address, there is another silver lining. A consolidated spend repository across all of the departments spend in an organization, believe is a huge value for tracking and improving the many sales and marketing programs. It actually can become an invaluable tool to help optimize the spend. But at another, just to share an anecdote, at a recent aggregate spend conference, one of the attendees asked a question related to the cost involved in, say, an aggregate spend initiative versus the penalties that seem to be stated by the laws. As you're aware, the high side of these penalties are in the range of about $100,000. The question was, if the penalty on the high side is about $100,000, why should we spend so much money on a project to do all of this reporting? I'm not sure if this person was asking a trick question, but the presenter rightly responded, highlighting the potential intangible loss of credibility and public trust that could result from violating this law. In fact, I think this is the key reason that is driving this initiative at most companies. Sure, the lack of clarity on the Sunshine Act, which we are still expecting over the next several months, has many people on the fence as to when to begin, say on a full-fledged initiative, but the thought is still on everybody's mind. Moving on to, say, the when and the what needs to be reported. This slide, thanks to, I borrowed it from Kim's deck, so thanks, Kim, gives you a good overview of all the different different states that currently require this reporting. You see the dates, what needs to be reported, how needs it be, or who needs to report it, etc. And at the bottom, you also see that the Sunshine Law, the first reporting date is expected to be March 31st, 2013. But the key here is, given the number of states that require this reporting, by the way, this number is growing, along with all their nuances around the reporting dates, what needs to be reported, for example, to include advertising costs or not, makes this pretty much a full-time task for a team in an organization. Sure, automation can definitely help and take this a long way in alleviating a lot of the pain in this process, but the path to get to this automated state will take a good amount of effort, budgets, and will require executive commitment and support. Finally, going to the who would manage the aggregate spend solution. This is again been a topic of big debate in the industry of late. Given the many touch points within the organization that are involved in this spend process, a cross-functional team is a must to manage the solution, not only during the implementation phase, but even after the implementation to manage the solution on an ongoing basis. I just cannot stress the importance of the right level of executive sponsorship. You can imagine with folks from finance, IT, compliance, commercials, product development, etc. There are many competing interests, and the right level of senior sponsorship and stakeholder would help move this in the right direction. Now, the other question that comes up is whether this should become a compliance initiative. Sure, the compliance head seems like an obvious choice, since one of the key goals, if you will, for an initiative like this is to provide the legal compliance reporting stuff. But we've seen that when there is sponsorship from executives on the commercial side, it definitely helps to move this project more effectively, both from a funding side as well as the business case perspective, if you will. And of this entire team, I do want to underscore the importance that the compliance team will play, whether they actually own the system or not. They do play a pivotal role just because the key aspect to this initiative is the interpretation of the law and its translation into business rules and policies, both during the pre and post implementation phases. They do play kind of the glue role, if you will, for an initiative like this. With this, I'd like to ask Ashish to walk you through the Saama approach.
Thanks, Arnav. So now that we have the background of why we need to track and report aggregate spend, let us understand what goes into building an aggregate spend solution. We at Saama have worked on several aggregate spend implementations in the past as well as present, and would like to showcase the methodology we have adopted and mastered. As you will see, there are 4 distinct phases to any aggregate spend project from an IT perspective: the planning phase, the analysis phase, the data integration phase, and finally, the reporting phase. Let me walk you through some of the key aspects of each of these phases. The planning phase. As the name suggests, you plan for the solution in this phase. You understand the parties involved, that is the stakeholders, and clearly define the roles and responsibilities during the course of the project. And not only during the course of the project, but also post-go live, that is during the steady state of the project. You still need to get the executive buy-in and, of course, the funding to execute the project. Luckily, this being a compliance project, funding is usually not a problem, but the cost and benefit will always be something that the team should justify. For that, you need to clearly state your goals and evaluate options with varying costs and benefits. This is typically the part of your project charter that you form. Then you develop the plan in terms of schedules, activities, and milestones, your typical project planning stuff. Understanding the law and policies, both state and federal, is then your next step. Usually the compliance or the legal department is either aware of the laws or may hire an expert in this domain, someone like Kim Life. In this, you would then capture the current spend process to understand the areas of spend, basically who is spending this amount. The different types of spend, basically what do you spend on, or the categories of spend, the different manual processes and workflows in the spend process, the different spend capture systems and the granularity of information captured in each, because they might vary. The various financial entries in your financial system or the ERP system, the backdated entries, your general ledger, adjustments, etc. And finally, you gather all the future business and system requirements with the help of a business analyst who would ideally understand your business and technology needs too. while gathering the business requirements, it's important to include the process changes required post-implementation. And let me give you an example. Like, you should expect inquiries from HCOs, HCPs on what was reported, and you should have a system to address their concerns, or at least answer their questions, and then make corrective changes as needed in your process and systems. As part of your planning phase, you need to perform your due diligence in determining our available options in terms of implementing the most suitable solution. That helps in performing the cost-benefit analysis as well. If you need to start reporting for federal and state compliance, you have two options. Adopt the traditional manual route of getting a few employees or contractors help collate the data from various spend applications, Excel sheets or emails, etc., and manually aggregate the information and put together a report based on their best efforts. Or you may automate the reporting and analysis by building a technical solution. We all know how painful the manual process can be. Manual method of reporting is quite laborious because it involves gathering, screening, validating of several thousands of records across various department systems for every state and federal government. It is prone to errors. Humans are prone to errors, especially when it comes to data. You may rely on your best to put together the report, but can you guarantee that? Well, that's a doubt. Moreover, they are neither scalable or flexible. Today, we have only a few states that are asking for these reports, and we see more and more states that will soon ask for the same. You cannot possibly add more people on this to get it done. It's just not scalable. Tomorrow, if the law changes a bit, how easily can you make the change to all that you have reported? Next to impossible, right? Next comes the expensive. Yeah, obviously, considering the number of resources required to be employed throughout the year over several years, along with the cost involved in filing adjustments, manual data validation, and so many things, the cost is quite humongous. Since it's prone to errors, it poses a huge risk as well if the data is not accurately reported. Litigation costs are themselves quite high to be ignored. Then the last, the people dependency. The entire manual process is so people dependent that you cannot plan for contingencies. People fall sick, they may go on vacations, they may quit jobs. Well, we cannot have control over all these, and that would jeopardize the entire compliance reporting. So automation is has all the advantages and is the easy pick over the manual method, as you see. So that's the check mark from us. So let's look at some other available options. Once we determine what we need to automate the system, knowing the downside of leaving the process in manual mode, we again come to a point where you need to decide between other options available in the market. Knowing the market is infested with so many technologies and products, it is often a challenge to determine what is best suited for your need. Usually you ask the product vendor for a demo or a proof of concept as applicable before you decide. Let us quickly look at the available options. Option 1, assuming the pharma company has a system to capture spend, like an ERP system or an SFA system, you can customize the existing application to develop the compliance reports. The advantage is that there is no need to purchase a new product or software. The cost is low and the development cycle is quite short. The disadvantages of such situation is that it does not apply if there are several spend capture systems. If there are several of them, you are looking at possibly integrating the data across these systems into a single application. This simply isn't feasible. Moreover, these systems are not meant for analytical needs. They do provide some bit of reporting, but they are not truly analytical applications. Now let's quickly move on to option 2. There are several product vendors in the market who claim to have the right solution for you. They have front-end applications that are built over either say a BPM or a business process management product, or stand alone with some fancy looking screens and ability to generate reports. But what about the data integration aspect with the source systems? What about the flexibility and scalability? What about the analytical capabilities as in the previous option? You may end up doing long cycles of proof of concept to determine the best and yet not find a solution that does the trick. The advantages again in this case are that there is no need for development. It's a product, obviously. They have ready set business rules and readily available reports. Also, an out-of-the-box is relatively quick to deploy, because that is meant to deployment. The disadvantages are that you end up bearing a high upfront investment followed by cost of maintenance, upgrades of the software, and whatnot. Usually end up customizing for your needs, right? So because the product is out of the box, you definitely need to mend it for your changes. Development efforts to integrate with the source data themselves and the need for the MDM still exists. Moreover, you will find less analytical capabilities than you have desired. So let's move on to option 3 now. With so many vendors going for the latest and greatest in this particular SaaS, which is the service software as a service, or people also call it service in the cloud, or with many names. This option looks like the best bet for those who don't want to invest in buying or building, but simply outsource the reporting, providing the spend data to the vendor. The SaaS vendor's product will have the business rules built in it for each state law that you subscribe to and would generate the reports in the desired format. The advantage here is that there is no major capitalized cost. It's a subscription model. Basically, you pay low annual payments. Again, no development or maintenance required here because it's not a product that you have it in your house. And a very few resources are required to maintain the solution at your end. But there are quite a few disadvantages as well, though the advantages seem quite favorable. Well, there is no or very less analytical capabilities, again because it's again a product, just that it's hosted. You do not have the data with you now, that the data you have sent it to the vendor, but you do not have stored it in your systems at all. Moreover, corrections to the data are not possible. Rather, they are a little difficult because, again, it's not in your system. You need to send some amendments. How do you do that? Vendor has no or limited liability, and hence you are responsible for the data or the reports that get generated. So you need to be on top of things. You need to validate the reports, and that thing is still on there. Quickly moving on to option 4. Try to look at this solution as any other data management, data integration, business intelligence project to build a homegrown hybrid aggregate spend solution. What I mean by saying this is aggregate spend solution is not too complex, or it is complex in a way, but you try to look at it from a data management perspective. It seems that you have done similar things in the past. It's not rocket science. That means expect ETL, expect data warehouse or a data mart, and expect a reporting tool in the mix. As for the advantage, it meets all your business and system requirements like data quality, MDM, reporting, or your analytical needs. It will be flexible, it will be scalable because you are the one who's designing it. Basically, you own the data and you own the code, right? Why pay others to generate your reports when you can do it on your own? There is one-time development investment, but then you can easily maintain that with a smaller team. Well, there are a few disadvantages. Of course, there is a moderate upfront cost in building the solution, and you need to keep updated with the changing laws. So depending on your organization's current investments, affiliations with the software vendors, you will need to determine the best option for your situation. Now let's move on to the system requirements. Once you understand the business requirements for the aggregate spend reporting and analysis, it is important to understand the system requirements that support the solution. Data centralization. Spend data is spread across various spend capture systems. Centralizing this data in a data store is an important step. Data completeness. Well, partial data is of less use, especially when you need to report aggregated data, right? Missing a data set could mean the difference between reporting and not reporting the spend, as it may fall just below the threshold. Data accuracy, master data management, MDM, and data quality go hand in hand to ensure data accuracy. We shall talk a little bit more on this in our analysis phase, which is the next phase. Automatic reporting, of course. Having centralized the data, you should expect the system to provide automated reporting based on your predefined parameters and formats. Then lastly, there is a need for an admin tool, a front end, preferably a web-based tool that will help the business have controls over the parameters such as the business rules and provide facility to validate and correct the data before the reports are submitted to the state and federal agencies. Now that you understand that what the system should do, let us also understand the different attributes that make up this system. Laws may change, and so would your business rules. Also, newer states may demand for similar compliance reporting. The system must be flexible and scalable to accommodate these changes. The system must maintain history for trend analysis as well for audit purposes. The system must store data at the lowest level of granularity. Well, data can always be rolled up to the desired level of reporting, but capturing the data at the lowest level is very important. With so many states asking for reports at different points in time in a year, also the rules differ state to state, and so do the formats. It is important to design a system that maintains all these flavors. Accommodate corrections and amendments. Well, once reported, changes can always be made through a process of amendment. So the system should be able to accommodate all these corrections as well. System must also able to alert while approaching spend limits as a proactive measure. Apart from reporting, the system should finally and very importantly provide analytical capabilities too. In the analysis phase, we shall understand the landscape, basically the systems, the data, etc., to better design the aggregate spend solution. A lot of emphasis is given to the source system analysis to know where and how within the spend capture system does the spend data reside. Data governance, data profiling, data quality should be looked at to ensure clean and accurate data. Every spend capture system produces master data, which needs to be deduplicated across systems after agreeing on a common definition. MDM is the key aspect in any data management or business intelligence initiative. I will not be going too much into the technical details around MDM, operational, analytical, but the point I am trying to make is data conformance. MDM plays a big role in an aggregate spend solution. Let us quickly look at the next slide that gives you a pictorial view of what the landscape might look like. Here you see different spend capture systems, and the data we would need is extracted from each of these for our reporting and analysis. As you see, we may have interacted with the same recipient through different systems, but it is quite impossible. Impossible basically to find to match the recipients. It is possible that the recipient may have been entered with a slight variation in their names in these systems. Let me take an example. For example, if in an SFA system you have captured a recipient as Dr. Bill Jones, whereas in your ERP system maybe he is referred to as Dr. William Jones. Well, how is it possible to humanly identify the two recipients are actually one? Well, MDM as a solution will help identify these and deduplicate the master data. Third-party master data providers like IMS, Walter Stewart, and people like that possess the master list of all HCPs, HCOs along with their unique IDs that will help us deduplicate the master data. Finally, the data integration phase. This is where we start developing the actual code. It involves the extraction of relevant data from various source systems, transforming the data by applying validation rules and undergoing the MDM deduplication process, and loading the transformed data in a spend repository, which is designed for reporting and analytical purposes. Data that is not stored in systems and held in spreadsheets or data received from a third-party data provider may have to be fed into the spend repository directly. Also, the data has to be verified and corrected before it is reported. So what do you do in this case? Well, a system admin tool, which is the front-end application, must be developed to manage these manual interactions with the data and also for modifying or tuning the business rules. Let's take a look at the high-level solution architecture for a typical aggregate spend solution. To your left, you will have all the possible spend capture systems. This is relevant data extracted and stored in a temporary staging area where the data is cleansed, deduplicated using the MDM processes you see there in the middle. And finally, the data getting loaded in the data mart, which is nothing but the spend repository. As you can see, any reports, analysis, or a dashboard can be developed over this data that resides in the data mart. And obviously, you have the admin tool through which you control the business rules, corrections, and all the changes you make to the data mart. And then comes the reporting. Apart from the, talking about the reports, you would see there are several types of reports here: the state, the federal, the compliance, operational, and analytical reports that are possible. You may use your existing reporting infrastructure to build these reports, or things like you may have business objects, Cognos, or any of the reporting tools, or SAS as well for your analytical needs. Apart from the mandatory state disclosure reports listed here, what is more important is what are you doing with the data other than just reporting to the regulatory agencies. I mean, reporting is one aspect of it, but hey, there is a lot of analysis to be done on the data. Now that you have the data stored in your data mart, why not use it? There is a lot we can do. Different departments spend data on events, conferences, meals, hoping that the efforts will transpire into increased sales. Without a way to measure these, one cannot know if the spend was worth it. Trends over a period of time can be used to monitor the spend and raise flags if non-compliant. Another example that I will quote is comparison of actual versus budgeted versus forecast, if any. This again helps you to track the trend, and we can proactively control the spend. Well, there are other analysis scenarios also listed here that can be used. Now let's turn to what the aggregate spend itself as a solution would look like in terms of the project timelines. As you see from our past experience in a couple of implementations that we have had, typically this solution takes about 30 weeks for a mid-size to a large pharma company. And if you see the layout here, the schedule itself, the planning analysis as well as the design take the majority of the effort upfront, because unless you plan and design it well, your eventual product is not going to meet your needs. You will also see a lot of testing being done here. Yeah, testing is very crucial to ensure that the data being reported is accurate as per the business rules. And just to make sure, you may also want to consider a parallel manual versus automated run before doing away with your current manual reporting. So you might see that the implementation, which usually in any other software implementation takes maybe a maximum of weeks, here we are saying a good 3 weeks, because you may need that parallel run to clear out the things. Well, this was the project schedule. Now that we have an understanding of all the 4 phases in an aggregate spend solution and what the timeline looks like, let's quickly look back at the challenges that you need to look for. I will not go through each bullet point that I have listed here, but shall touch upon the top ones. The top one that I can think of is obviously the first one itself, the ownership and accountability. It takes more than one department to deliver these goods, right? Without a well-defined RACI, roles and responsibilities, that's what I meant, and a buy-in from the executive level, the program is bound to fall apart. Yeah, you definitely need that ownership and accountability, even to get started with the project for. Then the second point that I would like to mention is the data governance and MDM. These are the next challenging tasks that you will have to take up, and these will be really major. These take significant effort in ensuring that the company speaks the same language and have a common understanding of terms. Well, and there are a few more challenges that I have listed here, and you could go through the presentation at a later point in time. For now, I would like to hand over the presentation back to Harnath to give his thoughts on the key takeaways, after which we shall be ready to take your questions.
Thanks, Ashish. So to quickly highlight some key takeaways, if you will, from this session, one important thing is aggregate spend is here to stay. I'm sure you've heard this said many times, but what I'm trying to say here is we would actually recommend that you do move forward and embrace and get an initiative in place to help put together a right solution for your organization. We have the discussions with several of our clients where we understand that given the lack of clarity of the sunshine requirements, they're not sure how to move forward. But the bottom line, it seems like the need for collating all of this spend data into one place is a must. So the sooner you get started with that kind of an initiative, it would put you in a much better position in the months to come. Definitely, the second thing I would add is the complexities. Another reason why we would recommend that you get started sooner. The range of these vary from anywhere from the fundamental data quality kind of issues, like the Dr. Bill Jones and Dr. William Jones that Ashish referred to. This could actually lead to events where you're reporting actual expenses differently for Bill Jones versus William Jones as two different doctors, in which case you don't even know that, or the system would not alert that there is a limit that's been exceeded or anything like that. But if, on the contrary, if there were two different William Jones and for whatever reason they got reported as the same doctor, that definitely would start to result in a bunch of inquiries from these healthcare professionals asking to figure out why they are being reported as having participated in say, an advisory board or something, which they weren't. And all of this will require the system to be prepared to make corrections and adjustments as needed, and process to receive these inquiries and query and report back to ensure that these are appropriately addressed. So definitely don't underestimate the amount of complexity that you would have to deal with, and that's another reason why I said starting sooner would put you in a much better shape to address these. Definitely think about your future business needs while you're designing this. This is like pretty much for anything else. It is much easier to incorporate these future needs, if you will, during your early stages, say the planning analysis phase, and can potentially be a much harder thing to do to bolt it on at a later stage. The spend optimization thing, we've actually seen a bunch of success around this, and so I believe this is definitely worth a shot. Well, what I mean by saying this, to quickly recap what I had mentioned earlier, beyond just the compliance side of things that you could get out of a spend repository, the spend optimization kind of effect is fairly useful to highlight to senior executives, especially this does resonate with the commercial folks. Again, commercial folks having a lot more budget than the compliance folks, they become a good candidate to get a buy-in from, if you will. So definitely worth a shot to use that case. And then the last point was fairly self-explanatory, reaping the benefit, if you will, of this the spend optimization. It's basically helping organizations get a better value out of all of their spend, and so better visibility and understanding directly leads to actions which lead to better value, if you will. With that, to the last part of our slides or our presentation today, I'll hand this back to Christy. Christy?
Thank you, Harnath, and thank you, Ashish. We really what I'd like to do now is open this up to Q&A. And before I take some of the questions that have come in throughout the session, I do want to say that one of the questions that we typically get with, my organization is not the same as every other organization, where do we start? And so what we'd like to offer to everyone who's had a chance to sit through one of our sessions is really a personalized 1-hour needs assessment. We would sit down with you, listen to your current issues, your current environment, and help to recommend your best starting point, the best next steps. So I want to let everybody know that is available to record this 1-hour call. Just simply email me or call me at the numbers listed on the screen. And I will also be sending you this information via email after the session. So that's addressing one of the first questions we get. Now I'd like to open it up and just let you chat in your questions. Again, the chat button is located at the bottom right of your screen. If you can't see it, just maximize your current slide view, and then you'll see a red arrow that points you back down to the chat. So if there are any other questions, go ahead and chat them in. In the meantime, we do have a couple that have come in here. Also, I wanted to let you know that our speaker from last week's session, Kim Life, who is an attorney with Life & Moran, a life sciences legal boutique, is also on the line to address you. So first question I have here for you guys, Harnath and Ashish, is, do I need to have a full-blown master data management solution for this initiative?
Sure, I can take that. So I wouldn't say that you need a full-blown master data solution that goes across the entire organization, which in itself is a pretty big beast. But what I would say is it is important and critical that you get the right kind of association of all of your spend or expenses to the right physicians or HCOs, if you will. So it is important. It will lead to a lot of additional rework and all of these inquiries, which is again from, say, the healthcare professionals about incorrectly reported spend, does lead to a lot of effort and a lot of reconciliation, fixing, etc. So the takeaway I would recommend is make sure that you do have at least around the physicians a good set of master data approaches. It does not have to be a fancy solution, but it has to at least accommodate for associating with the right kind of expenses, deduplicating the ones that are different, or merging them if they are reported differently versus separating them out if they are incorrectly merged, if you will. So yes, this should be seen as an important ingredient to an aggregate spend solution.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have is, which functional business area should own the solution, recognizing that there are multiple stakeholders, but that the solution shouldn't be run by committee, et cetera. So what is your recommendation on where it should be owned? And maybe that's a question Kim could comment on as well.
Yeah, this
sure.
is, go ahead, Hannah. We're going to polite our audience to death. This is a question that we get really frequently at conferences, and a lot of companies are grappling with this. My recommendation, and I'm getting beaten up by a few compliance departments for it, but is to have it sit in compliance, because so many of the issues are compliance related. Now, granted, there has to be a very strong connection to your IT and your finance departments, but generally these most of the questions that come up and most of the issues that come up tend to be compliance related.
Okay. Thanks, Kim. The next question I have here is, do you believe that 21 CFR Part 11 applies to technology solutions related to aggregate spend?
I think that would be a thing that Kim would be able to address.
Is that something that you're familiar with now, or would you need to look at it further?
I'd have to look at it further. A lot of this has to do with the GXP environment. We need to look at that and look at it further. If the person who asked the question wants to call into us later, I'd be glad to have a conversation with them offline.
Okay. Great. It looks like those are the key questions that have come in at this point. If anyone has anything else, feel free to chat it in. We'll wait just a few more moments here. And just a reminder, we will be sending out a copy of the presentation as well as a link to the full recordings to everyone who attended. So look for those in the next few hours. And I don't see anything else coming in at the moment. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap up, and we appreciate everyone's time today. We know you're very busy, and we appreciate you taking the time to attend our webinar. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Are we off the air?